B-U-T-T-E-R, nut.
Well, hi there, food friends. It is Kevin.
It sure is. And I'm Ralph behind the camera.
And welcome to Cavalcade of Food, or Cavalcade of Fall Delights.
Yeah.
Today, Ralph, we're making a butternut squash custard.
That sounds good.
You know, it's hard to embrace fall fully and not bring in our friend squash. And of course, we love squash of all kinds: acorn squash, butternut squash, Hubbard squash,
Pumpkin seeds. There's so many things you can do with them, and different things you can make with squash and pumpkin.
And we love all kinds of squash in all kinds of forms. And so now, I mean, you go to the market and there are just these crates and crates of squashes. That'll warm me up, huh? It's cold in here. But anyways,
not for long.
Not for long, because we're going to heat things up with this squash. And this is a butternut squash, Ralph. And we've had these in many different ways, in many different things. Sometimes we roast it with a little butter and brown sugar, and sometimes we puree it in other things.
I think did we make a pie out of that one time?
We may have.
But yeah, that's something multi-purpose.
So this, we're going to make a custard. So this is really a side dish. You could even serve this if you wanted to after dinner.
Almost like a dessert.
Almost like a dessert, but
it's not super sweet, though.
It's not super sweet, but you know, it's nice if you've got other things on the table that are more savory, to have something that maybe has a little bit of sweetness to it. And you know, most squash is very mild in its own flavor. It doesn't have a really strong, pronounced flavor. So you have to sort of, that's why so many things that are made out of squash are spiced up.
Right.
But what we want is, we want just a medium-sized butternut squash, something in the 2 to 3 pound range. So I had 2, Ralph. Look at, one's large. Look at this one. And I brought the scale here. This thing is like 4.5 pounds. So this is
hefty,
Big Daddy. If you were going to double this recipe, that would be ideal. We're going to just make this one, look at that, 2.5 pounds. So this one is just a perfect size.
Like Goldilocks would say, just right.
Right. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to start by cutting off the top. That beautiful gold color.
Mm-hmm.
Now what I want to do is, I want to peel this. Now, not all vegetable peelers will work. The butternut squash skin is thick and can be on the tough side. So I'm going to go ahead and get this peeled. Once I peel it, then I'll come back and show our friends. We'll cut it open and clean out the inside. Okay?
But were you going to say that the peeler's not always...
Some peelers, you know, are sharper than others. If you don't have a peeler that will do the job,
just use a sharp knife.
Yeah, you could use like a paring knife or something like that.
But very carefully.
But yes, do it very carefully,
okay,
so that, you know, we don't want any accidents. But I'm just going to keep peeling this until we get it all off.
Okay, and we'll come right. Peeling looks like it's done, and now it's cutting time.
Done. So now it's cutting time. So I'm going to just see if I can just cut this right down the middle here, like so. Okay? There's our inside. Now, best way is to just take a tablespoon and just scrape it out. Those we don't need. Although,
unless you're going to roast them.
If you exactly, you could. You know, roasted squash seeds are a wonderful treat. Maybe we should save these. These are on the small side. They're not as big as like a pumpkin seed would be.
Yeah, I would roast them. So save them for me if
You want? Okay.
If not for you, I know you'd have a hard time sometimes with seeds and things like that, but I can eat them.
Yeah, we just need to wash the kind of the
Gunk,
the goo off of them.
and then we'll have pepitas.
Exactly. Okay. So, all right, now we've got that. I'm going to cut the, you can see the little end there. We're going to take that out because we don't want that either. Now what we're going to do is we're going to just dice this up. Let me put it in a bowl. Let me get rid of our. Oh wait, we're saving it. Thank you, boy. You know, if you leave it up to me, everything gets tossed out.
I
right,
know.
Ralph? Okay. So let's save our seeds here, and
Yeah, we'll clean them up later. Maybe we'll even
job.
maybe we'll even do an episode if we haven't already on roasting pumpkin seeds.
You know what? I don't think we did, and yeah, you know, especially if you're carving pumpkin. For
Yeah, you get a lot that
Halloween.
way, don't you?
Yep. So,
Okay,
so
time
you cut
to
your squash. I kind of cut that bottom bulbous part off for now, and then we'll start. Now these are hard, so what we got to do is we're going to soften it up, and what we're going to do is we're going to dice it, and we're going to boil it in a pot of water.
Right, so you just kind of chunk it up,
Just chunk it up like so.
and that is so that you can more easily boil and soften it.
Yeah, and you know these squashes are, you know, on the hard side, so just make sure you have a good working kitchen knife. So I'm going to dice this up, and then I'm going to add a tablespoon of salt. Just cover it with water, bring it up to a boil, and cook it for 10 to 15 minutes until it's tender.
Cook until tender, got it.
So Ralph,
Mmm.
they cooked for, I guess it was about 15 minutes. Let me grab a fork here. And you just want to make sure they're nice and tender so that the fork just goes through these pieces effortlessly.
That's called fork tender.
That's right, and it does.
And it smells so good. It smells very earthy, and you know that smell like when you cut into a pumpkin. It's got that fresh, earthy sort of autumn aroma.
Okay.
What are you doing now? Just cooling them off?
Well, I'm trying to get the last one out of this pot here. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to transfer these back to this pot. Let me empty them in here. But this is, you know, someone asked, could I roast these? Yes, you could, if you wanted to.
You mean instead of boiling them?
Instead of boiling them, you know, to roast butternut squash, it would take
A bit longer.
quite a bit longer. So, but if you have the time, and I love the flavor that a roasted vegetable has, do it. But it is quicker to do what we did, which was just to boil them.
In water, or I mean salted water, or just regular water?
Just salted water.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the squash. I've got a half a cup of all-purpose flour. I'm going to put that in there.
Okay.
And I've got a half a cup of brown sugar.
Ooh,
I'm going to
okay.
put that in there. Now what I'm going to do is let me find my potato masher here. And we're going to just bring all this together. Okay? With the masher. I like to do this part by hand.
Yeah, give that body, upper body workout. Give your muscles a workout.
But it's a good way to also make sure that it's all blended nicely. Of course, you know, there's moisture. You have moisture in the squash.
Yep.
But
Oh yeah, it's mashing up very nicely.
you see that?
Very quickly too, I might say.
Yeah, because it was nice and soft.
And warm.
And the flour, of course, we know the sugar's going to give it a bit of a sweet. All All right, and then the egg, the flour will help kind of give it some body.
Right, thicken it up.
All right, there. Now, what I'm going to do is I've got 2 tablespoons of melted butter. So that'll
always good, yeah.
That's always good. That'll richen it up a little bit. And then, Ralph, I'm going to put in just maybe a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Okay.
Okay.
Because we got to have a little of that. Then I'm going to put in about a good 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. You could put more or less to your taste. Okay.
Cinnamon.
We don't want it super spiced.
Right.
But the cinnamon enhances the flavor.
Yeah, without distracting. It's sort of like when you're doing your pumpkin pie. You want to taste the pumpkin and not all those strong clove and spices. Cinnamon.
Exactly. The only other thing I'm going to put in here is a couple of grates
of fresh nutmeg. Because that goes well with eggs.
It does.
And I see
Now,
you've got some eggs and some dairy.
I got 2 cups of milk.
Okay, 2 cups of milk.
I'm going to put that in there.
Room temp.
Yes, and then I've got 3 eggs. Let me get my beaters here. I'll put the milk in. Of course, we talk about this is a custard, and we know that a custard is milk and eggs, right?
Basically, yeah.
So we got to have both. We're going to put in our 3 eggs here.
That must be why I like French toast, because it's like a custard.
Well, what you dip the bread in is a custard, absolutely. Okay. Now let's blend this together. So you want to get this all good and mixed. And of course, you could do this by hand also. I find that I like the way that an electric mixer kind of pulls it all together, and it continues to really smooth out that squash.
What kind of vintage hand mixer are you using?
This is a wonderful old, and by the way, I know some of you we just did a vintage mixer episode a few weeks ago. This is an old General Electric from the 60s, and still works like a charm. One of our many old reliables around the Cavalcade kitchen here. Okay.
You could call it Old Faithful.
That's right.
Any of those old appliances that they made so well that work to this day.
Now, I've got a casserole dish here. All right.
Okay.
And I'm going to give it a quick spray with non-stick baking spray. This is a 2.5 quart casserole.
Because this is going to be a side, and
It's going to be a side.
could even double as a
And
dessert.
it should give a little bit of a lift from the eggs.
You mean the spray you just used?
The eggs should.
The eggs should lift it up,
Yeah, a
make it
little
a little fluffy.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like a casserole?
Well, I'm putting it in a casserole, but it's really a custard.
Right, okay.
But you know what? I don't know. I think anything in a casserole dish you could almost call a casserole.
Or in Minnesota, a hot dish.
A hot dish, and right, our friends in Minnesota always tell us. All right, 350 degrees is our oven temperature.
Okay.
So we're going to put this in the center rack
Carefully.
for about 50 minutes.
15, 1-5?
50.
Oh, 50,
50
5-0.
minutes.
50
Okay.
minutes, okay.
We want it needs to set, okay? So we'll do that, get cleaned up, and come on back. Butternut squash casserole. Ralph, I checked it at 50 minutes, and it wasn't quite set yet. So I left it in for another 10, and I think it's done now.
Oh, good.
So how you always test a custard is whether it's a pie or you're making an egg custard or something.
You tell it a joke and see if it jiggles.
Well, maybe that's one way. But what I do is I stick a thin knife, like a paring knife, in the center. And if it comes out, when you pull it back out, if it's clean, then you know you're set. Okay?
I guess that'll work too.
That's what we want to look for, and that's how this tested. So, it smells so good.
It does. It really has that kind of almost like a pumpkin or an apple pie smell with the cinnamon.
Yeah. So, there it is. I'm going to...
Great color.
Yeah, isn't it? It's beautiful. I mean, it just is so fall.
Yeah. What were you going to say? You're going to what now?
I'm going to let this cool for just a few minutes. I don't know if you can get in here, but if you also see around the edge...
How it's darkening?
Yeah, so that also tells me that it's done. And we're just going to let this cool. It's too hot to eat, but it'll cool off in a few minutes, and then we will spoon some out and try our butternut squash custard. We have let this cool for a few minutes. So, Ralph, I'm just going to dig into it here. Take a little piece off the side.
Dig it.
Look at that.
Oh,
See?
I was curious if it was going to come out looking like a flan or more like a, I don't know, like a pumpkin mush.
Now you can serve this. Of course, it's still hot.
Oh, that's going to make a good
You
side.
can serve this just warm. You could even serve it at room temperature.
But it'd probably go great with turkey or ham or, sides like that. I mean, main courses like that.
Yeah, it definitely delivers on the custardness, because you're going to like this, Ralph, because you get a little of that eggy, custardy kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad I spiced it just enough where you're still getting the squash in the flavor.
Because I do love the flavor of just pumpkin and squash. And
I mean, and then, the top
has almost
part,
like a
has like
hardness.
Has almost like a top little skin on it.
Now,
but
what about the sweetness? Is it delicate? Is it?
Yeah, it's not. I wouldn't. It's not sweet, but it has a sweetness to it.
So it
but
really
it isn't like pumpkin pie.
Right. So it would be a great side, is what you're saying.
Or like how sometimes sweet potatoes can be done in a very sweet way.
That's what I was thinking.
It's not that sweet.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
the brown sugar gives it a very mild sweetness. Oh,
that's my bite.
Here's a spoon.
So if you were to serve it as a dessert, I bet you could just add like maybe some type of honey or whipped cream or something like that.
If you wanted to, I mean, honey would make it more sweet, but if you wanted to put it...
I'm saying for a dessert.
For dessert, whipped cream would be nice. Careful, it's still warm.
Okay.
But I want you to kind of give it a try.
Yeah, that would be a hit.
Isn't that good?
Yeah, it is delicate though. It's very subtle, but it is a nice contrast to a salty, ham or a savory turkey or any type of meat.
Gravy or dressing and things that are salty and savory. This is a
good
a nice
compliment.
Yeah, you definitely would be a nice dish on Thanksgiving table.
Well, I'd say that was
there it is.
That was a success. Butternut squash custard.
So, thank you for being a part of this little fall episode here, celebrating our friend, the butternut squash. We had a great time making this.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
We hope you had fun being with us. Love to hear from you. The whole recipe is below, above the comment section, so you can check it out there. We love to get your comments, and thank you for subscribing. And you know what? We'll see you again real soon.
Stay healthy, stay well, stay thankful, and I'll see you next time.
And stay strong. Right here on Cavalcade of Food. Bye, everybody.